We are about to go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to have is public comment. If there are any public comments, you come forward at this point in time. Okay, is there going to be instructional council update?
Yes.
Good morning, how are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you very much, Pastor Moody. Good morning, Pastor Moody and Mr. Ross.
Morning.
Nice to see you.
You too.
Instructional Council did meet last month. I think you have our notes from that meeting. It was at Innovation High School. You might recall that the last two meetings have taken place at high schools. One was at City, and then this past month it was at Innovation High School. And the focus of the last two agendas, and specifically I'll talk about the May agenda, was to meet with teachers so they could update us around the course syllabi that they had developed and then enacted in the classroom. And the discussion this month took place around business law, engineering design, academy design and construction design 1, and then design 2. So we were updated on those courses. Some changes that were needed that came from teachers was one, just some clarification, some paper errors. One was that one of the syllabi said that it was for 12th graders only, and it was really for 10 through 12th grade. And there were some other minor adjustments that staff shared. And it was a very productive meeting. The process of adding teachers to come back to the council and update us is good. It helped clarify, answer questions, help us understand really how the syllabi has been enacted, what barriers or struggles teachers might have had, and then it's also helped us identify ways that we can provide some support or some ideas. And then also specifically around programs like what we have at Innovation Central, it helps us assure that the program standards are being met and that they're modern and that they're up to date. So it was a real positive dialogue that happened. Hopefully in the future we can have more teachers actually sit in this seat, because not all teachers were able to get there because of our ongoing sub-issue, but teachers then put their feedback in writing. So that was very helpful. So that was our last instructional council meeting for the year, and the council will then join together again in the fall.
Any questions, Mr. Ross?
No, I don't suppose I do. No.
All right, thank you.
Mrs. Peck, I have one question.
Yes.
Could you give me an example of some of the stuff that was discussed in reference to clarifying some of your class? Is this in reference to the curriculum itself?
So tell me a little bit more about your question, because I want to be sure I understand the question.
You mentioned earlier in your notes that the staff shared suggestions for adjustments for some of the courses. What were some of those adjustments for some of those courses?
So one of the courses, and really it was a clarification, that we thought a course was only offered for the 1 year, the senior year, when it was a course that was meant to be offered for 10th through 12th grade, and in fact was being offered that way, but the course syllabus that we had in hand said only the 1 grade. So some of that was just clarifying. And then also, we have courses, and this is from the Academy of Modern Engineering. They are introducing courses that will be sequentially introduced. So last year they introduced a course. This year what was introduced was engineering design, and then next year they will come with another course that will be part of a course sequence that will be ongoing, and it's connected to a grant that they have received. So they clarified with the council that was actually the intended process. So that was helpful to us, just to understand that this was an ongoing process.
So that course will be a sequence to engineering design?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Take care.
All right.
Have a good summer.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Evans.
Good morning, Pastor Rudy
Good morning, Mrs. Evans.
and Mr. Ross. I just wanted to remind the committee that this meeting is a continuation of the last meeting. We covered M-STEP the last time, and we did not have the time available to begin our conversation on literacy.
Right.
And it truly is a beginning of a conversation. The folks that are in this room are working with another committee that is working on completing the academic plan. And so what we are providing for you now is simply background information that will lead up to that point, and we will schedule that time with you.
You wait a minute, you're saying that would lead up to the literacy?
To the academic plan.
Okay.
We will start the literacy today. As per your request, you asked for a series of articles related to literacy, and when you and I sat together, we discovered that there was probably more than we could consume. So we narrowed down to 4 or 5 articles that I think all of you have here. And I will just touch upon some of the high points. We also decided that we would study our current status. So we have Ron Gorman here that will cover our ACT trends over the past, I think, 5 years, and also Steve Petros, who will give us our data in regards to NWEA, or our MAP scores. And then each of the executive directors will just, on a very high level, talk about what is going on in their divisions as it relates to literacy. I know you said that this should be a shorter meeting, and I think that we can make that happen. But they are here to comment on at a very high level, on what's going on in their divisions. But that would be the sequence of what we would cover this morning.
Thank you.
Okay. So I just wanted to note a couple things, and I'm just going to hit upon these things to kind of get us on the same page as it relates to why this issue of reading and literacy is so important. There are a couple facts that I'd like to share with you. You have them in front of you. One starts off with the proportion of students who are below grade level is highest for male students and African Americans, students that have been in foster care.
Excuse me, where are you now?
I'm just reading my notes.
Oh,
I gave
okay,
Pastor
okay.
Moody some notes, and
Okay.
Students who are above grade level at 3rd grade, and I did give you my notes, but we found an error in it. If you, we will go back and correct those. Students who are above reading at 3rd grade are the students that we know enter college and high school ready. 3rd grade reading is a significant predictor of 8th grade success. 8th grade predicts 9th grade. 9th grade is a predictor of how well students will do in completing their content area courses. It also is a predictor of whether or not they will graduate on time. And it also is a significant predictor of college entrance as well. The traditional age or grade progression of students from elementary to middle and high school and beyond assumes that we teach literacy at elementary and kids will just become stronger as time progresses and as they go through the higher grades. We now know that that is not the case, and that we need to address literacy in some way or form throughout a student's college career. I'm just highlighting some of the things that you probably ran into in the articles that I gave you. We also found that research has found that 75% of students who are identified with reading problems in 3rd grade continue to have them without intervention. We also found, and this was the great discovery, that early intervention can make a difference. In fact, one of the articles that I gave you indicated that as high as 80% of interventions that were put in place before 3rd grade with fidelity had a positive impact. But changing the trajectory or a child's level of proficiency as it relates to literacy after third grade or age 9 becomes increasingly difficult with each year that we wait to intervene. Another point that I wanted to share with you was it's important to realize that vocabulary scores are a good indicator of how well kids are going to do on their assessment. We also see that vocabulary and social economic status are closely related, and vocabulary and reading levels are also closely related. So as the district and myself and other individuals put in processes to improve literacy in our district, as a board, you will want to look for evidence of direct vocabulary instruction, direct and indirect vocabulary instruction strategies, because it is important. We also found that with the older students, the longer that we wait, again, it's harder for kids to catch up. The support is more difficult to provide. Let's get over here. The challenge is that educators must figure out how to ensure that every student gets beyond basic skills. And in high school, we found that our students are pretty good at word calling. We consider that basic skills. We have to get beyond those basic skills and assist students with handling and maneuvering a complex text. Is generally where our kids begin to fall apart at the upper levels. We also know.
So when you say word calling, you mean just being able to read the word but not understand its meaning?
Absolutely. So we find that at the upper elementary levels, and I should have went article by article, I think I got nervous and jumped into this. But one of the articles that I shared with you indicated that at the middle and high school levels, the difficulties that children experience with reading, they are complex and vast. But we often find that about 75% of our kids can word call. They can decode a word. Perhaps not as rapidly as we like, but they can decode a word. What tends to create a greater challenge for them is handling a complex text. Being able to determine the gist of a passage or the main idea of a passage, creating, providing evidence or supporting their position, on and on, comparing and contrasting. It looks more like college level work, and it goes beyond the basics.
So you're talking about their comprehension level?
I'm talking about their comprehension. And I'm not only talking about comprehension, I'm talking about comprehending work in a way, and text in a way that they would have to emulate at a high school and college level. Goes beyond just reading words.
So where is Grand Rapids Public Schools at in that arena?
So, and we have people here that's going to share our data with you. And they will also, what we have done for today's purpose, though, is that we're going to provide you with a very high-level look at our data. It won't delve into where kids are with comprehension or vocabulary. That's some work that we have done as a system, however. But we know that vocabulary tends to be troubling, not just for our students, but there is a close correlation between vocabulary and SES. And it's not, as I said, not for Grand Rapids, but across this district, across the state and nation, and probably across the world. But because vocabulary is so critical to high levels of comprehension, we start to see the impact of that as kids go through the higher grades. One of the things that I provided for you also was a list of recommendations that came from the article called Reading Next. I only stuck those recommendations in your packets, because eventually you'll get our academic plan. And our academic plan should be reflective of many of these recommendations. It will provide you a lens that you can use to evaluate our work and strategies. So you have a list of about 15 recommendations there that came from this article, and it's also reflected in many of the other articles that I shared with you earlier, Pastor Moody. You will probably just want to peruse those recommendations. Some of them, and I every time I see this, I think about Ron Gorman, because he pulled up some data in relationship to direct explicit instruction. That was one that came up first. Text-based collaborative learning, tutoring, intensive writing, the use of technology, although that wasn't as high leverage, ongoing formative assessment, extended time in literacy, professional development, intensive professional development, ongoing summative or common assessments, teacher teams. Literacy leadership was one that showed up a lot in literature now, and meaning that you have to have leadership at the building level that will keep their finger on the pulse of literacy, and then a comprehensive coordinated literacy program. When we come back with our academic plan, I'm hoping that those kinds of things will be evident, because we were very intentional in using what you're saying, Pastor Moody, our specific data to drive that planning, as well as what we could find in research as being impactful in the way of strategies. So what I did for you was kind of goof up my presentation, because I was going to take you through the highlights of each article, but you have those articles, and the other thing is, what you will see is that the articles were consistent in saying the same thing. At around, up until second or third grade, many of our kids look the same. Their levels of achievement are about the same. Their levels of vocabulary attainment, they're about the same. There's not that much of a discrepancy. So the challenge we see with literacy is not a challenge of intelligence. It's a challenge of experience. It is around third and fourth grade that we see our scores begin to become challenged, and it's for a lot of reasons. I gave you the article on vocabulary because that's a huge area that we will need to focus on, and it comes up in all of these articles. But at around third or fourth grade, we start to see the discrepancies. And our district has taken the position that we would program specifically to address those challenges at each level.
Thank you. I definitely thank you for pulling out the sort of high points of the articles. That was pretty helpful.
I just messed that completely.
No, but it was in the packet,
Okay.
and I even read them prior to that. So thanks for that. I do have maybe a question, maybe since we're talking literacy, that may not be totally appropriate here, but I do know I've heard maybe building criticism. I don't know if criticism is the right word, but just a concern about the balance of literacy and mathematics. Obviously, we all do know literacy is kind of the foundation of it all. But again, there's of course a balance. So when I saw the recommendation for extended time and includes approximately 2 to 4 hours of literacy instruction, I mean, obviously they didn't say whether that was daily, weekly, or whatever the case, but I guess as we move through this, I'd just like to hear philosophically, maybe, of course, again, understanding literacy by far is the foundation, but I'm just curious on how we're going to achieve that sort of balance, because I do know in particular the elementary level, some of the teachers seem to maybe shy away from the math. They're more comfortable with the literacy piece, and so
So one of the things, Mr. Ross, is that the state has put an emphasis on literacy as well. So we are sort of aligning ourselves. That's only a small portion of our rationale for putting this emphasis. Our rationale is clear, especially for African American minorities. You know the data related to incarceration, employment, on and on and on. It is probably the most, I know we could argue that probably for a long time, important skill that we as a district will need to impart upon our students. Without that skill, we know that they will struggle in most of their core courses once they reach 8th and 9th grade. And actually, as I said earlier, we see them begin to struggle at a much earlier rate, at a much earlier grade. So we feel that reading is important. We don't think that we are suggesting to teach reading and exclude math, because it probably is the second most important area of emphasis. But we for sure are clear, and our data certainly clarifies that we need to do a better job with teaching literacy. Even when we look at our national norms, the expectation for reading abilities have increased. And across the nation, we have not kept up. 69%, depending upon which report you're looking at. When you look at NAEP scores, about 69% of our kids are not proficient in reading. Only about a third of them are. So if we're going to be able to compete locally and certainly nationally and globally, it is a starting point. When Mr. Gorman comes up, he will talk to you about the importance of literacy about across the content area. We're saying that even in math, literacy is important, because math no longer is no longer just calculating or an algorithm or using an algorithm. It is reading about a problem and being able to understand the problem, and then thinking about a problem and finding multiple entry points, and then putting together a plan of solving that problem. So we think it's really important, and we think it because of the population that that we serve. And for me, I always say this, I have no apology for it, because the history and the power that goes along with literacy, I think it's important, and it is incumbent upon us to do a good job with teaching kids to read.
So, Mrs. Evans, in the report that we're going to hear today, since the 3rd grade is a predictor for the 8th grade levels, what's going to take place and how is the 3rd graders are going to be taught reading in a different manner?
So what we have for you today is the data that sets that format or lays that foundation. It will show you our data and where we are. The next time I come back to you, we bring you our academic plan, or the next time we approach this forum regarding literacy, we will bring you our academic plan, and then we'll have Mary Jo and some of the other people that are here as well. What we didn't do, and because that's not what I thought we were instructed, I could talk about it though.
No, I just want to know if there's something that's going to come up in the future that will address what you're going to do in the 3rd grade, because you're saying that it is a predictor. So
it is a
If
predictor.
you already have data that says this is where it begins, and you can stop it.
Absolutely. And you know what? I've studied literacy for a long time. And some things don't change in research. And what we do know about intervening early, it is important. The earlier you intervene, the more success you have with intervention. So our academic plan has placed a focus on literacy, and you will see that there are certain things that we put in place: an extended amount of time, closer monitoring and the use of assessment, formative assessment. One of the key pieces that I'd like to emphasize that's coming up new in research in the last few years, probably last 7 years, is this whole notion of literacy leadership. It's such a it's such an important area that the leadership at the building would have to have a set of skills also that are specifically related to promoting literacy within their buildings. And we've kind of gone through and we've identified those. So all of those things we'd like to share with you on the next time because it kind of outlines where we believe we need to go. For today's purposes, if it's okay with the board, we have prepared ourselves to just address where our current status and what's happening in the building now. And we will bring you the academic plan. We will give it to you ahead of time so you can read it, as you have done with the articles, and so that you can question us in any way that you would please.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank
So
you.
we're going to have Mr. Gorman and Mr. Petros come forth at this time, and they will share with you our data.
Apologize for being late.
Pastor Moody, Reverend Matias, Mr. Ross, good morning.
Good morning.
In your packets, you should have a document entitled Literacy Focus for 2015-16. Do you have something that looks like this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what I would like to do is give you just a high-level update of where we are pertaining to ACT. I believe this is strongly related to literacy, because if our students can read and comprehend complex text, they're going to do really well on standardized assessments. And this will be the second to last presentation I give you on ACT, because ACT is going away and we are now in SAT mode. There's a redesigned SAT that the students in Michigan will take next year, and so I can't wait to tell you more about that. I would like to start with the current 5-year trend data for ACT, and I would like you to look at a couple of items on this document. If you look at 2009-2010, you'll notice that the district had a mean or composite ACT score of 16.7. You'll notice that in every subsequent year, with the exception of one, or every subsequent year, the scores either stayed the same or increased, and actually they only stayed the same in 1 year, which was from 2010, 2011 to 2011, 2012. We've now raised our scores from 2009 to our last year, 2013, 2014, to a 17.6 composite, which is an increase from 16.7 in 2009, 2010. Something that's very interesting also, and has really surprised me as I was putting together this presentation, is if in 2009, 2010, we tested 722 kids on the ACT. In every subsequent year, the number of students taking the ACT declined in our school district, and I believe that was probably attributed to declining enrollment, among other things. And I really thought that going into this next school year that the number would be even lower than that 548 number, because we made a decision as a division that we were not going to allow the students to take the ACT test anymore unless they at least had the opportunity to take freshman and sophomore level classes. In the past, we had students who were missing some freshman and sophomore level classes as a result of getting behind, and therefore didn't have the appropriate content to take the test. I was very surprised to find that we, in fact, even with the criteria that you must take freshman and sophomore core classes, we've tested more kids than we've tested the last 4 years. So we're now testing 626 kids, which is significantly up from last year's 548. And then you'll notice we're getting really close to those 2009, 2010 numbers. And I believe this is attributed to some of the enrollment increases that we're seeing in our district, some of the stabilization efforts that we're seeing. So not only are we projecting that our scores are going to go up again as a result of the early interventions that have been taking place, we're testing more kids. So it's not like we're testing less and seeing the scores go up. Now we're testing more. If we switch to English, the English portion of the ACT, you will also notice a similar trend, whereas In 2009, 2010, the ACT composite scores were a 15.5, and those scores grew almost every single year, and now they're to a 16.4. And for individuals who know anything about school improvement efforts, you do not want to see a spike the next year. So you don't want to see a school go from 15.5 to 17.5. I'd be very suspicious of those results for two reasons. You hardly ever see jumps like that. And if you do, is it just a spike because you address technical things? Ensuring that the kids had enough test prep, ensuring that they answered C when they didn't understand the question. We don't want those. So what I like about our gains is they're ticking up a little bit every single time. And if you look at school districts like Charlotte-Mecklenburg that's made significant jumps in improvements, it happens over 10 years, but it's a slow incline. And that's what you're seeing not only with composite ACT scores in our district, but in every single content area. As we transition to reading, and this is an area on which we've been focusing all morning, you see a similar trend. From 2009, 2010, we had a 17.1. Last year we had a 17.7. If you switch to mathematics, you're seeing a similar trend as well, 17.1 to 17.6. And then if you switch to ACT science, which many would say that the ACT science test is not a science test, it's a reading test. That's where we're seeing our greatest gains with the students who in 2009, 2010 had a 16.8, and now it's an 18.1. Our goal, our composite goal going into this school year as a division is to break that 18 threshold composite for the first time. And if you look at, if we go back to the first slide, where it's District 5-year trend current information, we've gone from 16.7 to 17.6. Our preliminary data are showing us that we're on point to hit that 18 or greater than 18. Of course, our new ACT results are still embargoed. They'll be released in July. That's usually when the state releases this year we'll be releasing the M-STEP results, hopefully, and with that, the ACT results. All the students who took the assessment all have their scores. All the buildings have their scores. It's just not public information yet, and when it becomes public, we will share those with you. With the ACT data, are there any questions?
No, it just seems to me like you are showing some significant increases each year, but still by a small percentage.
Absolutely.
But it's still going up. I would be concerned too if it jumped so rapidly. I would be concerned as to
and to
why
put it
the
in,
jump is so fast.
absolutely.
But I do want to ask Mr. Gorman.
Sure.
With switching over to the SAT, I know you're not ready to talk about that yet.
I might be a little bit.
Okay, good. What would be the difference between the data SAT and the ACT in terms of reading?
I would like to think that our results would continue to improve. And the reason I'm saying that is because we are focusing more on skills than test prep.
Right.
Test prep will only get you so far. Okay, people are probably sick and tired of me using this example, but if I don't know how to use a semicolon, teach me how to use a semicolon. That's equipping me with a skill. Instead of, this is how you can jump a point on this test if you just answer every single question. If you're stumped, do this. That's a short-term fix. The long-term fix is, teach me what I don't know. So that's the long-term fix, and that's what we're addressing in our division. And therefore, with the transition to SAT, if we continue to focus on skills, we shouldn't see a dip.
Right.
An important piece of information that needs to be shared is there are 20 school districts in the ISD. There are only 2 school districts in the ISD, East Grand Rapids and Byron Center, that have outperformed us in terms of ACT growth over the last 2 years. My hope is that with everything we've done the last 3 years, with ensuring that the freshmen had the opportunity to take the Explore assessment, that the sophomores had the opportunity to take the Plan assessment, and that the juniors now have the opportunity to take this high-stakes ACT assessment, this is the first group that's gone through that cycle of all 3. My hope is that we now have more growth than every district in Kent County. And I may even, I'll predict that we're going to be very, very close to that. Tied to ACT or SAT, any standardized assessment, is a focus on literacy. We have to. And we need to, our theory of action in the high school division, and I'll read it to you. If we ensure that all teachers incorporate into their practice high leverage literacy strategies, and that students who need the most support during reading instruction receive necessary reading interventions, then our students will become proficient, college and career ready readers. This needs to be, I believe, for reading instruction, literacy instruction in the high schools, a two-pronged approach. One being, we need to be able to have intense interventions for the students who are farthest behind. This year in the high school division, in our comprehensive high schools, we are having a reading class for the first time, right? So the students who are at the lowest Lexile levels in the building, and then the students who are just a tad bit higher than that, they will have reading classes. It's ironic that in school, at the high schools across the nation, just not Grand Rapids Public Schools, we don't teach reading in isolation. We don't have a reading course. We just make the assumption that you're good to go, you're ready to take government, you're ready to take social studies courses, and by the time you're a ninth grader, you should know that. Unfortunately, you've all been at data dialogues, and you know that sometimes students enter our high schools at a 5th or 6th grade reading level. Right? So if we know that they're entering at those grade levels and we do nothing about it, shame on us. So our two-pronged approach is having intense interventions for those students with the lowest Lexile levels, and then ensuring that in all of our classes, even physical education, even art, we're ensuring that teachers have skills within their repertoires to be literacy teachers. Now, the pushback is, I went to school to be a mathematics teacher, I'm not a literacy teacher. Although I would agree, I think there are some things that you need to do when your students are so far behind. And you can't fall back on, I only teach math. We all need to have skills in our repertoires. And so I unpacked those just a little bit, and I know I'm getting a little more than high leverage, but literacy in high schools, reading across the curriculum. We want to ensure that our students are able to read complex text, are able to read, closely and critically, ensuring that they know what the text is about, what the text means to them. We want to ensure that there's writing and class discussion in every class. Unfortunately, I've seen some English classes where I don't think there's enough writing going on. We need to ensure that students also have powerful literacy strategies within their repertoires. Not just the teachers, the students need to have those as well. We need to ensure that our students, our teachers rather, have the stamina to read these long passages. If you've ever looked at an ACT passage, these are very long.
Right.
And we have novels and that are assigned to every single grade level, which are complex text. But our students have a little longer to get through those novels, where if we're focusing on standardized assessments, you've got a short period of time to get through a long piece of text and then answer questions. And then teachers will provide opportunities for all students to reach their potential. There can't be a one-size-fits-all approach. We can't teach to the middle. I know it's easy, but we can't teach to the middle because we have students who are above grade level and some students who are below grade level. So just to recap with our plan, two-tiered approach. Students who are at the lowest entering our comprehensive high schools will have intense reading interventions. The students in all classes will be equipped with reading strategies to help them navigate our system. Switching gears to our newcomers program, we have a newcomers program at Union High School. These are students who are brand new to our country. Those students will continue to be self-contained for that first year in newcomers, and then as they transition through newcomers, they will have built-in interventions to help them, because they should need, more than likely will need more intense reading interventions than students who are on grade level or are behind.
These are the English language.
These are students who are brand new to the country. They show up in the United States, first time. We direct them to Union High School, which is our newcomers program, where the students are there for 1 year.
That means when you say newcomers to the country, they can be coming from anywhere.
Anywhere. In many instances, lacking transcripts, So we're really doing our very best, and I'm out of my lane a little bit. I know Dr. Gunnell is the expert here. It was incorporated into the high school piece. Please, Dr. Gunnell.
I just wanted to say that not only are they newcomers and do not know any English, but they have very limited educational background. Because if I had a high school experience in my own country, I would not be going to the newcomers program.
So,
In many instances, the first opportunity at formal education.
Yes, formal education.
So you said if I had a high school experience in my country of origin, I wouldn't be coming a newcomer. So if we have documented post-secondary education in their country of origin, we don't put them in newcomers?
Some students do come with formal education, high school education, and they've done quite well in their own country. They have formal education and they've had maybe 2 years of high school. We do not put them in newcomers because they have the education. They can transition into high school with ESL support.
Okay,
We still give them support, but it's
Gotcha.
a different type of support.
okay. Thank you.
and if they don't speak English, you still put them in the program though, right?
Not if they,
Not in the newcomers program. We put them in the high school
ESL.
program with ESL support.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
yeah,
But they're not self-contained. They're mixed in with
Right.
all the other classes, which, again, it's a struggle for them because if they don't know English and they're in an English class, having to write English, they're going to really struggle.
Well, they
Because
take
it's
ESL.
not-
We have the ESL support class. They may
So
not,
they'll have some kind of bilingual or other supports within that.
they will
class.
take the ESL class first rather than the ELA class.
Okay.
So they take the ESL class for the whole year?
Yes, there's an ESL class that runs the whole year. ESL 1 and 2.
Okay, and then last but not least, we're talking about accountability, expertise, and support. Number one, first and foremost, ensuring that the curriculum is taught in our buildings. I think that's a no-brainer. Ensuring that we have frequent monitoring of student progress. One challenge that we have when we're placing the students with the lowest Lexile levels into remedial classes is that we do not want them to be in there forever. The goal is to improve Lexile levels and then get out of those classes. The last thing we want to do is create a track of students who are always the lowest readers in the building. So therefore, some intense interventions freshman year, potentially sophomore year, and then you've improved your reading skills. Therefore, you can matriculate through high school with minimal supports. Also, and you can read the rest of the slide, just really ensuring that, parents are our partners in this, and that's why I put that in bold print. There's a lot of work that goes into ensuring that students are on grade level, and opportunities like Parent University that we have, and having those direct lines of communication with our teachers and our parents, it is truly important. Being a parent in the Grand Rapids Public Schools, spending a couple of hours every single day focusing on the GRASP books that go in the summer. If we don't want to have that summer learning loss, those are some of the interventions that need to take place at home. So how can we ensure that our parents are aware of summer opportunities so that our students don't get behind? How can we ensure in the high school level that summer opportunities are exclusively for students who need remediation? All the work we're doing with higher education is helping as well. So ensuring that every single student, pre-K through 12, has a summer learning experience, either informal or formal, so we no longer have this summer learning loss, or we begin to address it. The last page shows you a little background on Lexile levels. At the college level, to ensure that students are prepared for college, a pretty good indicator is to get them to about a 1200 Lexile level. As you can see, 1185 to 1385 is between 11th and 12th grade. So the number continues to tick up as to what college level work is. But a Lexile level of 1385 is really the goal now. Student around 1200, we believe, will be able to do college level work. And just a little description of what a Lexile level is. If you have a Lexile level of 600, you should be able to read a Lexile level book of 600 and comprehend approximately 75% of that material. That's where the teacher comes in, to ensure that you comprehend more than 75% of it. Because if we can provide adequate feedback, you can comprehend 100% of it, no matter what your Lexile level is, with a little bit of help.
All right.
Any questions? Reverend Matias?
Yeah, I just want to make sure too that we're working with partners, like, for example, the Boys and Girls Club, that we get a lot of tutoring of our students that goes to those. And if they don't know what we're doing, or for that matter, our libraries, making sure that they have a list of things, or in our English and Spanish newspapers, where we can continue to promote, because parents read those too.
Absolutely.
And if they're reading that information in their language, they're going to be reminded, oh my gosh, I need to make sure my kid is reading this or that, or the suggested materials that might go with that, and where they can find that. Because I know a lot of parents are concerned and are asking, when they know their kid is behind, they want to know, how do I get them there?
What can I do?
And oftentimes they'll get down on their kid in terms of, okay, I'm taking this away or that. But if they don't know, then, and Lexile, all those things, if they don't know what that means, then they're not going to know how to help and so forth, or even where their kid is rated. Hey, my kid is going into 9th grade, but he's going into the lower level reading. If they know that, then there's some things that they might be able to do to help their student out, particularly as they're wanting them to not get further behind, and those kinds of things. So it's really critical that we make an effort to work with partners that are in fact putting valuable resources, men and women power, to actually help us in the public schools. And we want to make sure that they understand what those strategies are, so that they can work with us as they're figuring out how to make that change. And certainly churches and the like that are doing things as well. So,
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berman.
I just want to acknowledge that the charts that you have in front of you have been slightly updated, so that you have our most recent assessment results as a part of the packet. It is totally accurate, but you will have another layer of information.
This is for
to
current
assist.
status?
Pardon me?
This is for current status?
We are continuing with current status, and I think because Ron has kind of given you an overview of what's going on in his division already, when we talk about the divisions, what's happening in the divisions, we'll go right to Rick and Maida. So he'll just give us our current status.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good to see you all again.
morning.
So, indicated this is a continuation from our mid-May meeting. At that time, we were still in the middle of our spring map testing window. Since that's concluded, we've updated the graphics to demonstrate not just fall to winter, but fall to spring, both growth and status. So I'm only going to share 2 slides with you this morning. They're pretty busy, so I'll try to provide a little guided tour to walk us through this. So what you see on the screen behind you is actually the updated current fall to spring or spring to spring information, as opposed to the fall to winter stuff that you might have from the May session. So in general, good news to share. Thank you. Good news to share, and that is for the past 4 academic years, our conditional growth index, which is a measure of student growth, has been above average. And when we convert all of those CGI, conditional growth index scores, you'll see that they're all positive. For context, anything above 0 is better than average. Anything below 0 is less than average.
Is there a simple explanation to help us understand how that's calculated, CGI? Or is it too complex?
It is
right now?
it's a statistical Z-score. Think of it as a scale from -3 to +3, standard deviation. a bell curve, if you will, with the middle of the bell curve being 0 for the 50th percentile. What might help a little bit is the rightmost column. We convert all of our CGI scores to a percentile score on a 1 to 99 scale. So that's probably a little bit more common, with the 50th percentile kind of being the middle or average. So again, the good news is that for the past 4 academic years, in each of our divisions, or at least of our grade categories of 1 through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 11, our students are showing better than average growth. And our premise really here is that if our students continue over time to show positive or better than average growth, then gradually, over time, more and more students, and thus a greater percentage of our students, will be at or above grade level. So within each of these 3 grade categories, really look at, if you will, the top row. That's the most current, this past academic year, fall of 14 to spring of 15. For our elementary division, the very top row, if you look over in the top right, you'll see that our students are at the 57th percentile. So they are above average. They are slowly gaining ground with respect to their national peer group, and more students are at grade level. At our middle and high school level, grades 6, 8, and 9, 11 respectively, this past year we're at the 52nd and 51st percentile. Again, above average, this is good, but not by much. And in all 3 levels, we did take a slight slip from past year, not by much, just by a couple points perhaps. But overall, certainly we want to be real satisfied and happy with the fact that for 4 years running, our students on average are showing better than typical growth or better than average growth. So that's the growth perspective. On the other side, because whenever we talk about achievement, we want to discuss both growth and status. This is a busy slide, so let me start kind of with a guided tour up in the top left with our first graders, just to kind of give you some context here, and then we can walk through the different grades from that point. This is status. In the top left corner, for the first graders, you'll see that we have 5 rows, 5 past school years, looking at their average spring scores from 2011 through 2015. Now what's interesting, or what's probably the most appealing, is that percentile column. So for our first graders from 2011 to 2015, we've increased our percentile rank from the 23rd to the 37th. Some really nice substantial growth there. And essentially in nearly all of our grades in reading over these past 5 years, we've demonstrated growth. We've demonstrated, not growth, I'm sorry, but rather we've increased our rank.
So,
yes, please.
where do we want to be?
Well, certainly the higher is better.
So what's that higher? Give me a number.
As proxy for grade level, we use the 50th percentile.
Okay, so from 2011 to 15, we went from 23 to 37%, but we want to be at 50, correct?
The 50th percentile would represent grade level.
Okay.
That's what we use as proxy for grade level. Now, we could continue the conversation and talk about college and career readiness, which is a higher bar, but for the near term, I think it's probably best if we just anchor on the grade level piece at the 50th and use that as a more short-term goal. So that's kind of the context here, just to kind of give you a little summary of all grades 1 through 11. By and large, in most of our grade levels, our students, on average, are either in the high 20s or low 30s. Now, at the extremes, with respect to the range, at the highest, our 11th graders in spring of 15 are at the 46th percentile. At the other end of the range, our 5th and 9th graders are at the 26th percentile. So we've got about a 20-point percentile range throughout the system. Looking just at a 1-year change from spring of 14 to spring of 15, in the majority of our grades, specifically in 6 of the grades, we showed an increase. In 2 of our grades, there was no change, and then in 3 of our grades, we slipped by a point or 2. I do want to piggyback on a comment that Carolyn shared earlier, in that we do tend to find some challenges in our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades. And you'll notice that our percentile rank in those grades does slip a little bit from 1st and 2nd. And there's an interesting part of the assessment I want to share with you, just to give you some context, and that is, for our 1st and 2nd graders, and you'll see it in this past spring, they're at the 37th and 30th percentile, respectively. That is actually an audio listening test. we call it a reading test, but actually the students either use headphones or earbuds, and it's a listening test in the English language. But once they start third grade, it then becomes a reading test, truly a reading test with no audio support. And that might be one reason why we see a bit of a slip from grade 2 to grade 3, simply because of the change in the test delivery. So again, looking across all the grade levels from a spring to spring comparison, we do tend to see some nice increases. That's consistent with what we see on the growth side. It's consistent with what Carolyn shared earlier with the research. And it's also consistent with Mr. Gorman's comments about small, sustained incremental growth over time. So again, nice positive trends, certainly not huge leaps and bounds, but we're definitely pleased with the incremental growth.
Given that we have a large number of Hispanic children in our district, how does that, particularly like in the first, second grades, where most likely they're coming in speaking Spanish and not necessarily, reading and so forth. Overlay that with this.
Now, excellent question, and it's quite timely too. So I'm going to break it up into kind of a two-prong answer. For our students at Southwest Community Campus, our dual language program, and for primary grade students at Southwest Community Campus and the native language classrooms at Burton, Buchanan, and Chavez, they're actually exempt from the math test. Because in the classroom, they receive their instruction in the Spanish language, and so we don't think it's an appropriate fit to have them receive instruction in Spanish language and then be assessed on an English audio assessment. So we've exempt them from that. During this past year, we've actually been piloting a computer adaptive reading assessment with instructional support that was developed organically from the Spanish language, not a translation from English, but developed from the language itself. We're still kind of evaluating that pilot and determining if we're going to move forward with that for next year, but that would address, again, the dual language program and the native language classrooms for our youngest students in those 4 sites.
So these numbers don't reflect those schools, correct?
They don't reflect those students in those schools. Now keep in mind that for Burton, Buchanan, and Chavez, they do have some primary classrooms where English is the language of instruction, and those students do participate in the MAP test. They also have native language.
Like in their third grade, probably?
Our third grade, everyone participates, or overwhelmingly so. Ultimately, we do give the teachers or the building principals the discretion to make that call at the building level. If a student can't fully engage in the test, then it doesn't make much sense for them to actually participate, because ultimately assessment is about feedback, and if the student can't engage, to give meaningful feedback to the teacher and the school and the district to differentiate the instruction, then.
So,
Yeah, I think it's important to note here that this map is strictly internal. This doesn't have anything
Correct.
to do with any state or federal benchmarks. Strictly
Excellent point.
feedback for
Yes.
us.
yeah.
As
So again, if they were included, these numbers would be lower.
They would be, and I'm looking at the first and second grade, first grade in particular, that 23 and 26 from 2011-12. I believe during those years, the students that we were just discussing at those 4 sites, they were included during those early years of our experience, of our partnership with NWEA. And so that might attribute a little bit to the bumps, the increases in 13, 14, and 15.
All I was to say is that there's a lot of work, being done, transitioning students and families, at all these levels. I just want us to be realistic about, what we're trying to accomplish and the steps and the work and the hard work that a lot of teachers and parents are doing to make that happen, especially if even for the parent who wants their kid to transition into, an English environment, is also struggling to help their kid learn something so that they stay on grade or that kind of stuff.
I think that comment really goes to Carolyn's comments about the strategies and the academic plan, which will be shared later on. The MAP assessment really serves 2 purposes. It helps us kind of gauge our progress or our success, and luckily we're in year 7, so we have some nice longitudinal data, but it also provides information at the teacher level to help them differentiate their instruction for the children. So it's a twofold set of benefits. So that's the internal accountability assessment part of it. Do you have any questions with respect to MAP?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Change.
Yeah. Well, he didn't have it. The spring day. Hey, he didn't have it.
We're waiting for lights.
Oh, there, let there be light.
Let there be light. Good morning, Pastor Moody, Mr. Ross, and Reverend Matthias.
Morning to you, sir.
Morning.
And you, ma'am.
Morning.
Our charge today is to just give you a snapshot of really what's taking place currently in our classrooms to achieve the results you see below and certainly surpass them. But I want to begin really first, I think, with a comment that you made, Pastor Moody, and that was around really what are we doing at third grade? And I just want to go on record and make sure that we're keeping the mindset that the work around literacy begins long before third grade. You know, I was recently in Chicago at a conference, and one of the things that is really becoming the hallmark of the conversation is birth to three. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, what happens before a child ever enters a classroom or ever enters a school, but then also the preschool experience that children are engaged in, and then what happens kindergarten, first, second, in advance of third grade. So I want to keep that in our forefront of thinking. And then, Mr. Ross, you mentioned the conflict between literacy and mathematics and science and social studies and all those other important things. To assure everyone that we're committed to a balanced approach. You all received the pacing guide for ELA, for English Language Arts, along with the report card, I believe, and some other teacher materials. Those materials exist also for mathematics. Those materials exist for science. Those materials exist for social studies as well. So just to keep that in mind, that it is still a balanced approach, but that we recognize that students are going to have a very difficult time being successful in those other content areas if they can't read and navigate the text and the materials. So that being said, I hope today to give you just sort of a snapshot of what the literacy framework looks like in a classroom. So in any given classroom, kindergarten through fifth grade, the framework is designed in between 120 and 140 minutes a day. And so what you'd see when you go into a classroom, there are three things that you would see with consistency. And I'm going to just give you those three things first and then kind of go back and dig in just a little bit, again, to give you a sense of what that would look like. Every classroom has a comprehension segment, which is around 40 minutes. They have a writing or language segment, which is around 40 minutes. And then they have a foundational or skill-based instruction or independent reading section or segment, which is around, again, 40 minutes. In addition, in kindergarten through second grade, they have an additional segment that's a foundational segment. And I can help you learn PPFVC. You want to say that with me? I won't make you do that. But PPFVC is phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. The 5 key ingredients to anyone becoming a successful reader has to have a firm grasp in all 5 of those areas. So that's an additional foundational segment that's provided kindergarten through second grade in addition to the other 3.
What was the other P? Phonics
You did
and
say
what?
what?
Phonemic awareness,
Phonemics. Yeah.
phonics,
I don't know that one. Phonemics. But
phonemic, PHONEMIC. I think I spelled that right. Mm-hmm. And that really is about understanding sound, rhyming, repetitive sounds that appear in language. That's something that happens really effectively birth to 3. It's a tough thing to teach an 11th grader.
It's Dr. Seuss that more.
Correct. You know, when you're sitting with your babies and you're reading those nursery rhymes, they're developing their phonemic awareness. So to go back, let's start with the comprehension segment. And each of these 3 areas have 3 additional areas within each of them, and those 3 areas are the instructional focus, what's being taught, the skill, if you will, the instructional framework of the gradual release, which means that the teacher does or models for them, so that's the I do, then they do together called the we do,
And then we do together, or you do together with partners, et cetera. And then you do on your own, or an independent practice. The materials that support the comprehension piece, really, the primary resource is the Reading Street Anthology. In addition is the level text, and then additional resources that are provided in the pacing guides for teachers, or the additional resources teachers themselves have. Remember, the state of Michigan determines the what. The teachers in their indomitable creativity decide the how, along with the assistance of the pacing guide. The writing and language segment, again, I said 40 minutes. That has, again, an instructional focus. And that is around a writing or language skill, and those are determined by the grade level content expectations or the standards. They engage in writing process. They engage in conferencing with the teacher. Mm-hmm. Conferencing means where I sit down with Reverend Matthias and he reads his writing to me. I learn a lot as teacher in terms of where he's doing really, really well, and we can push his learning, or areas that he might be grouped with others to provide some additional support. As well as spelling and grammar, and again, that same gradual release. We do together, you do with your partners or your small groups, then you do on your own through the independent practice. Materials, again, are the Reading Street units. We also do use some of the IFL units of study. There's also the GRAM in third grade, the Language Artist Program, as well as fourth grade, as well as the other additional resources outlined in the pacing guides, including the Lucy Calkins materials that lots of buildings are using. The foundational skill-based instruction or independent reading segment, again, 40 minutes, has that same instructional focus. That's usually tied to a literacy skill, a writing process, again, vocabulary building, using the same framework of flexible groups, the you do, we do, et cetera. Same additional supports. Do you have questions for me, guys?
Yeah, so just 40 minutes each. Comprehension, writing, reading. This is a daily rotation, or?
That's correct.
Okay. And this is K through 5?
Correct.
But then the K2 focuses also
At
on
the
that
additional,
okay.
yes. And what you're trying to do with the additional K2 focus, that's not necessarily, okay, now we're going to do phonemic awareness. That becomes woven into the work. So, for instance, a teacher might, if she or he has a group that's struggling with a phonemic awareness, maybe a book selection that day is going to really assist in that realm.
Okay, thank you.
So there are testing to prove that they have this particular type of problem, right?
Say that again.
There are some testing that you give to prove that they have this problem?
There is. There are not only the formative assessments that teachers use, but there is also common assessments that are designed throughout the pacing guide. And those are district designed, and they're designed really to mirror some of the expectations of the higher level assessments that students will engage in. But to that point, one of the things that I failed to mention beforehand is our goal certainly is success on an assessment, but we also need to create literate human beings who love to read.
Right.
So it's a balance again of both. I will hand to my colleague to my left.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
ma'am.
morning.
I'm going to be talking to you about our middle school strategies, but first and foremost, I want to tell you that, like Mr. Gorman and like Mr. Noel, the outcome that we wish for is to have all students be on or above grade level, whether they're newcomers, eventually they can become on grade level, or whether they're ESL, ELL learners, because we want them to be able to graduate and go on to college or a career, a trade, and be successful in Grand Rapids and in our society. But I'm going to give you an overview of the middle school strategies, and then I'm going to hone in on the reading interventions piece that is new for next year. And I'm going to tell you why and how it's new. In the middle school division, we, again, are concentrating on reading across the curriculum. As Mr. Gorman had mentioned, all content teachers need to know about reading and how to be a reading teacher. Obviously, they're not certified in reading, but they need to have those strategies so that a social studies teacher, a science teacher can help students in their reading become better readers. We also implement at the middle school level close and critical reading, which is a way to teach students to hone in on the gist of what they're reading. It's more complex text, and they have to give evidence on what they've just read and why. So that's a strategy. We have common syllabi, common assessments, and we do prepare students for the SAT so that they're successful on the SAT, not ACT. But I wanted to specifically speak to you about the reading interventions that we're going to begin doing next year. They're a little different. We have had reading interventions in middle school, yes. But next year, what we're going to do is we're going to hone in on the students' percentile on the map, like you saw Mr. Petros tell you how our students do on the map. If a student is 30 percentile or below, they're going to be in a reading intervention class according to their percentile, not according to their grade level. So I could be a sixth grader in the class with the same need, but be with an eighth grader. So that we're honing in on the skills and what you need as a learner. And as I, the learner, improve my reading instruction, every quarter I have the ability to move. It's flexible grouping of reading interventions. So I don't have a jail sentence in a particular reading class. As I improve, I can move to another reading class. If I improve tremendously during the course of the year or mid-semester, I can take another elective versus a reading intervention class.
Like that.
So we're excited about that. It's a new way of looking at interventions.
Yeah.
And I know we're only talking about reading today, but just to give you a snippet of what we'll come back to you about, we also have math lab, which is a math intervention class at the middle school level, too. Any questions for me?
No, I'm just definitely good to hear about the flexibility for a student to be able to move and up based on his level, his or her level, as opposed to staying in, like you said, I think you used the phrase jail sentence, but yeah, I get your meaning though. So no questions for me though. Thank you.
You did mention that the student would be in a classroom with other students from different grade levels, is that correct?
Right.
Will they all be being taught the same level of reading, or?
It would be more individualized, so that the teacher will have the strategies to individualize the instruction versus a whole group of 20 students.
Same percentile and approximate.
Lexile.
Back in the early 60s and late 70s, Grand Rapids Public School System had a reading program called COMAS. Anybody familiar with that? Don't tell your age now. It was almost similar to what you're talking about, where they had students in a classroom from different grades. But the only thing that was different was that they listened to audio tapes. Then they had to go and perform, read a little small book. I don't know if that program still, if you have any notes on that program, or
COMAX?
COMAS. It was called COMAS. Yeah, I don't know the acronym. That's the acronym, but I don't know the actual word that they called it. It was done at South Middle School. And I think they did it at Central High School as well. But it sounds like the same type of program. I don't know if you can go back and look at your records and see what they did and see if it's something similar, because sometimes we can create something new versus with the new technology that we have, and go back and grab some of those stuff and bring it up to date. But it sounds exactly like what you're saying, with other students from different classes. And teachers would refer those students out of their classrooms to that particular class. They would only be in that class for 1 hour, just one day out of the week. They would not go there every day.
You said COMAT?
It was called COMAS.
Oh, CEO.
COMAS.
Right, that was, like I said, that was the acronym of the class, but I don't know the actual name of it.
check it out.
Eli Lumpkins could probably tell you more about it. He was the principal at that time. I'm dating him too, aren't I?
We might be getting into a little detail, but I'm just wondering schedule-wise how that would work in middle school, given that kids have 6 classes. And so if I'm an 8th grader, but I'm reading at a 6th grade level, how is that going to work in my schedule to go somewhere where I need, if you want to call it remedial or not, work in order to get my reading levels up to where I can perform as an 8th grader?
As part of the scheduling process, and the schedules are all completed. So that's a good question.
So then based on their reading scores or whatever, you've placed these students in those categories or whatever, classes or?
Yes. Schedules will go out. They're all completed. They're due to go out in July.
Okay. Again, I think that if our community partners know what our strategies are, we're going to be able to solicit their help and perhaps materials or other kinds of things that are going to help us beyond the school day. A lot of our kids need either before or after school help aside from Loop. And it's really critical that we use the Y, we use, the Boys and Girls Club, we use other means that have, they have the personnel to do that and are ready to do that. And often they don't know, how do we help? No one's communicating with us, how we can help you all, kind of a thing. So that's really critical to solicit that. And, I'm looking, while I'm talking to you, I'm looking at our website, and I don't see any of this information on there. As a parent, we need, I'm going to say this, we need this kind of information out there already. I want to be able to go to an elementary website and know, other than, the principal and a yearly report, which doesn't tell me anything, folks. We really need
Mrs. Evans, do you want to
to be
speak about that?
proactive and do something about getting information to parents that are going to help them be able to go on a website and say, what does my child need? Because some parents, believe it or not, are proactive.
Are those
So-
links
They are.
live?
I'm
yet,
sorry, I'm
Mrs.
not trying to
Evans?
be mean.
No, you're,
No, you are
I think it's time,
totally-
I think it's
you're
time to
totally
go
on
forward
point.
here.
Pastor Matias, we think that you're not being mean. We think that in fact, I wrote a note to follow up and comment on your earlier comment regarding parents. I'm just going to give you a bit of history. We rewrote our report cards in the room with parents so that we could make sure that those report card statements reflected what parents felt that they needed. Now, the second layer of that work was to pull together parent resources. Now, I don't know where, I'm going to have to help you get to our link because we have a plethora of information and materials for parents to use that I want to get you to. And some of them are in Spanish, and we made sure that we had parent English and Spanish versions. Now, we know that we need to expand upon our languages now and go beyond just English and Spanish, but we have a plethora of information. So what you're telling me now is that even though we have it out there, it's still not visible enough. But we want to make sure that you know how to access those materials.
I mean, I'm looking at Burton here, and I don't have anywhere where I can click that gives me any, I mean, we have great headings, but I can't click on those headings and actually get, okay, here's my 3rd grade, here's my 2nd grade, or here's suggested this, or here's.
And you're right, they're not
Like that.
listed under the school, and perhaps that's what
could do a
we
link.
should do, is set up a link from our schools directly to our parent portal, and that makes sense.
Because it's natural that I would, if I have
To
a
your
Burton
school.
kid, I'm going to go to Burton. I'm not going to go to the district and then
Absolutely.
have to,
Absolutely.
surf,
But that's a good point.
30 schools to get to my kids. I want to be able to go to my kid's school and then get the pertinent information on
So,
stuff.
Pastor Matias, I
So-
think your idea is such a good one, and all it requires is a link from our parent portal to the school. I think that that's something we can follow up and.
Or the other way around, from the school page to the parent portal.
Yes, absolutely.
Right,
We act like we know how to
and
do
it
that,
just
but
looks
it's
like,
possible.
it
That's
just
an
looks
easy
like it's
fix.
from my school, but,
Right.
Yes.
you know,
But
you've
there
done
should
all
be
the
a link
internal
right on
work.
there. We can work on that, absolutely.
We will do that.
That's an easy
Yeah,
fix.
because, and then I want to make, because I want you to make sure that you have some indication of what's out there, and then you tell us if there are some other pieces of information that you'd like to see as well. Pastor Moody, may I continue?
Sure.
Okay, what we've done this morning rather, is to give you a snapshot of our current status. We first looked at the literacy, even though I moved that up, you have it in your hand. We looked at the literature, you have it in your possession, and we also looked at our current status. So at this time, I'd like to kind of forecast where we'd like to go from this point at our next meeting, or the next meeting that we convene in relationship to literacy. We have an academic plan and a literacy continuum. For the first time in our district, we have a plan that spans pre-K through grade 12 that addresses literacy. At our next literacy-focused meeting, I'm sure we will have the plan finalized and approved. That may be a good time for you to get a pre-K bird's eye view of what our programming will look like across the district. So our next step then would be to get you that information and perhaps some of the other supporting documents. In that continuum and in that literacy plan, you'll see some things that are reflective of our theory of action, because we know just putting a structure in place and content will not suffice without having some supporting pieces. One of them being our parents as partners, another one being our leadership in our building, on and on and on. So those documents will begin to lay out, and it will emphasize parents as partners. Because we know when we start talking about educating our kids to high level, we can't do that in isolation. 50% is considered grade level on our assessment, but 70 and 80%, meaning out of every 10 students in this country, 7 are behind you, or 6 are behind you, 7 are behind you. 70 and 80% is considered career in college ready. So that's a huge task to take on. So our next step would be to begin laying out what many of the people in this room have identified as high-level strategies, the content and all those strategies that we believe will help us to accelerate our growth as it relates to literacy.
Yeah, I want to thank you for all the reports that were given today, and I want you to truly know that we appreciate it. But I want you also to know that we want to help you help our children, because I strongly believe that literacy is a key. It's the key to the overall production of anything we do in life, and I have a reason for that. That's a pet peeve of mine, because I strongly believe that if you can teach a child how to read, as you said earlier, that child can go a long way with it themselves. Doesn't necessarily mean that they got to be college readiness, but being able to go to trade school or be involved in some kind of program that gives them some understanding as to what it is that they are going to do in terms of how to do an application, how to do a resume, or just going to just learning to work on a particular job that they go on every day. And I do think that parent support is very important.
Critical.
And I do think that there has to be a way where we get parents involved in their children's reading as well, because we have a lot of parents that don't know how to read either, so that there's a large literacy problem, and I think that the sooner we get to the bottom of helping push our children, the better I think Grand Rapids Public School will make that climb over the years. We might not see it for the next 10 years, but we are seeing some progress occurring now, and that's good. So, thank you. Any questions from my colleagues?
No, that as mean as you get?
Yeah, just a comment. I was listening to an NPR podcast in which some 60 to 65,000 visas are given to folks to work in our country because of some of the STEM or lack of readiness that is there. And so they're going outside of our country to get 60 to 65,000 workers in these arenas where there's a shortage, and it's because we're not producing that. And so I just want to be mindful of those kinds of things. That's a challenge to prepare our kids, because those are really good paying jobs. And so it was just a reminder to me that we got to continue to press forward. And I think, as Reverend Moody said, appreciate a lot of the hard work that is going on here on behalf of our kids and families, and certainly our staff that are working as well really hard, and knowing the kind of work that they do. So we really, I appreciate that as you do. Thank you.
And, and again, we have all this data, and we are good at producing data. But what about the outcomes?
That's right.
We need to produce some outcome with the data that we know. We know there's a problem. Let's get down to the business of fixing it, so that we don't recruit people in from other countries to come and do the job, but we become not just the consumer anymore, but that we become the producers. I think that's where we're at.
Thank you, gentlemen.
With that, thank you. Have a great day and a great summer.
You as well.
Thank you.